Hey Lions! Welcome to Student Conversations, Stories, and Lessons, where we explore the journeys of students navigating the complexities of leadership, personal, and professional growth. We are your hosts, Sakina and
Jannat Jacoby.
And this series is all about diving deep into the real stories behind the student experience. Stories that inspire, challenge, and empower us to grow. In each episode, we will sit down with students from diverse backgrounds to discuss the challenges that they face and the lessons that they have learned and how they have become the leaders that they are today. SCLD and YU would like to acknowledge many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories where York University campuses are located, which precede the establishment of York University. Our podcast is produced and recorded on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region.
So whether you are just starting in your academic journey, in the midst of it, or looking ahead, this podcast is your space to gain insights, find inspiration, and connect with the shared experiences of others. So, without further ado, welcome to our 5th episode, Overcoming the Fear of Failure. Woo! I can't believe we're already on our 5th episode. This has been quite the journey, guys.
It's
quite
incredible.
the journey. I love it.
And speaking of, just quite the journey, Jannat, let's honestly just get into who we are with today, because this is a friend of ours, this is a colleague of ours,
Yes.
and even someone now we're interviewing, which is incredible.
I know.
I feel like it's a great journey that we've come through into episode 5. We are interviewing someone who is actually a part of our team now.
Yes. He's a fellow Leadership and Equity Education Ambassador at SCLD. He recently joined our team in the beginning of the fall semester. And just looking back at me in particular, how I met Neb, I interviewed him for the Criminology Society, CSY. So that was that was 2 years ago. My God, how time flies.
Right?
But
Yeah.
without wasting too much time, let's introduce Neb to our guests.
Yeah, so Neb, or so we call him, his full name is Nebiyou Timotewos, and he is currently a third-year student pursuing a major in global political studies and a minor in human rights and equity. And he is completing a professional certificate in public administration and law. He is also an international award-winning humanitarian, author, and founder of Brothers for Brothers and Communities Care, organizations that empower vulnerable youth through immediate support and mentorship. It's incredible, Neb.
Right. Oh my
You're
God.
gonna make me cry. You guys are too sweet.
No.
It's really, doing work with impact is exactly why the three of us are here today.
Exactly.
And doing this episode is it's heart-touching for us all.
Yeah, it is. Like, that's why we started this podcast, like more than, and we were actually discussing this with one of our coordinators the other day, like beyond the numbers and the quantity and the stats, we do believe that it's important to also pursue projects and endeavors that have meaningful impact.
Yeah.
And if it can impact just one person, we can't undermine that.
100%.
Ripple effect, for
There's
sure.
a lot of purpose in what we're doing. And before we keep rambling on about why we love this podcast series, speaking of Neb's journey, he fled from a war in Yemen to live in a Canadian shelter. And this has shaped his unwavering commitment to uplifting others. For viewers who don't actually know Neb in real life, there's just one thing you need to know that he says, all right? Everybody knows it. And I think it's more than just words. It's really gotten into our heads at this point. And while, this motto is something that we all live by, I think by you just saying it, it manifests into us, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what is that motto?
there's a power in kindness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And when you let that sink into your gut, you're like, there is a power in
Analyze it.
kindness.
Oh, it is.
You saying that motto repeatedly really reminds me of something else that you say about yourself, and that is, I am Batman. And I think in the beginning,
I am Batman. though.
yeah, because you know what? If you keep saying something, and I think we've touched on this on other episodes, but when you keep saying something, you really start to believe it,
Oh, yeah.
and you even make other people believe it. And I remember when I doubted you, Batman, and I was like, who is this guy saying he's Batman? I would joke around being like, Neb, what do you mean you're Batman? But at this point, with the amount he said it, I'm like,
Patrolling
you
the city.
have the qualities of Batman. What was I saying?
Yeah. And
I'm
that,
sorry.
And that completely connects to the concept of overcoming the fear of failure, because there's a lot, like, you know, the whole concept, like, fake it till you'll make it,
For
and
sure.
to keep pushing yourself, and, you know, in spite of what others may think of you or what you even like think about yourself, like, if you keep going, and Neb, like, I would really appreciate you like offering your insights and your thoughts in regards to this, that you can really like shape your reality if you know, tackle that one thing. That
Absolutely.
one obstacle is fear. So if you can delve into that, like how, because you've done so much, like
Yeah.
it's so commendable, and we're so impressed and so honored to know someone, and everyone that knows you, every life that you've touched, it's so blessed. So if you can talk about like, how did you get to where you are today? Because it's, I feel like
You
everyone
guys are
has a
too
potential.
sweet.
No,
You're gonna make
no.
me cry out here. I appreciate the very kind words, but I could not have, you know, done it alone. You know, first is God. Like, I have to give, you know, respect.
Show them your wristband.
Oh yeah. So here I have a wristband which I was gifted actually. One, it says there's a power in kindness, which Sakina was talking about, and then it says God is good.
And it says his name too.
Yes. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. So I really have to give every credit to God. And then also my team, right? Team, friends, like you guys, community, and how I overcame everything, right? So whether that be, you know, poverty in Ethiopia, where I lost my two brothers, to then Yemen war, to then, you know, shelter here. It is something that my dad told me, which is there's victim mentality and then there's victor, right? So I think the key to overcoming fear, for me especially, was that the fear would always be there, but which is normal part of it, right? But the moment you start letting that fear, you know, limit what you do, that's when it becomes an issue, right? So then with this victim and victor mentality, it's, yes, you go through a lot of things and stuff like that, but you can use, like, your pain is your power.
Well
Right.
said, well said.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love that, the victor over victim mentality. We have to frame that.
Yeah.
That is a very powerful point. I think in terms of, you know, even when we talk about the fear of failing versus the fear of failure, and now
There's
we'll
actually,
touch
like,
on
a
where
funny
that came
story.
from. Yeah. But we'll talk about that in a second. But
For
when we compare the two, fear of failing versus fear of failure, one has a victim mentality, which is the fear of failure.
Yeah.
You put yourself to like these conditions where you're going to fail. If you fail, you're failure, like I'm a failure. You're putting yourself under these contexts of I am a fear of being a failure, or I have a fear of being a failure. Whereas with fear of failing, you recognize that you're not the victim to being a failure as a person, but rather you might have an action or an effort that you put in that might have failed in theory, but really, like, you will always gain
There's an
insights,
opportunity
and there's
for growth.
Exactly, there's always
sure.
opportunity for growth. There's always room for reflection, and you take it as, you know, like a little boost or
For sure.
something, a reflection where you can do better then.
100%. Mm-hmm.
And if you could actually just touch on the story of, you know,
Yeah.
where did we make that kind of distinction between the
Yeah.
fear of failure and failing?
For sure. So we had a workshop, actually, if, like, you guys remember, and then the name of the workshop was Overcoming Fear of Failure. And as I was, you know, editing it, and I'm like, something feels kind of off here, you know?
Yeah.
Which is like, I don't think, like, there's such thing as failure, as long as you are trying and as long as you are moving, you are not a failure, right? If something that you might do might not be, it might not, work out or whatever, but as what we just said, that's like an opportunity for growth,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
So that was when we changed the whole everything to overcoming fear of failure to failing.
That workshop from years ago has
Years
now
ago.
been
It's now changed
recycled.
and edited.
Yeah.
And I truly do believe it, because I feel like if you stumble and fall, right, you just have to pick yourself right up, because I generally don't think that it is about the number of times that you have failed, but that one success that you eventually do get because you chose to not stay down.
Exactly.
Right? And success is all about patience, right? Like you can't be true to yourself and work without patience.
Yeah.
And what comes with that and the whole concept of fear is also you need to avoid comparison, right? Like we are all in our own unique journeys, right?
Yeah.
So the main key, I also feel like where this fear of like failing comes is because we compare ourselves to others, and comparison,
and where they might be, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And comparison is the biggest theft of joy and peace. So
No, I love how you reframed the whole concept of failure and failing, because even like the way that the words are like sort of like the tense and like even how it's like shaped grammatically, it's like failure. It's like it denotes like this stagnant state that like you're stuck in this box. But failing, it has that, how can I put this?
Room for growth?
Yes, this growth, and also
Exactly.
it's a continuous thing.
Absolutely.
You're failing, but that doesn't mean that
one day you won't win.
exactly. Like it's a constant journey. There's waves, whereas like failure is like you're just stuck and it's like stale, stagnant water,
And then something with that is also like, failing sometimes can be blessing in disguise.
Yes.
Right? Because
yes.
when you fail at one thing, it's like, okay, now you know one way on how to not do it.
Yeah.
So now you're like a step closer to how to actually do it.
Ooh, yes.
Right?
I love
So-
that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think it's also important for us to talk about how this fear of failure develops in terms of how it can manifest into our minds, just so that we can challenge that a little bit and, get rid of a little bit of that fear. Because obviously, if we're able to control the amount of fear that we have towards failing in something, then we will be able to be more successful, because we're able to, less of our mental energy is being used up in terms of like worrying or stressing about failing in something.
Like
right?
breaking that pattern of, behavior.
100%. And even the thought process of failing in general.
Yeah. So if Neb, you can, one thing for sure that I feel like our listeners and our viewers and our fellow students out there, and even if you're not a student, we definitely would love for you to tune in. I feel like this concept applies to everyone that's breathing and living. Can you discuss how you broke that pattern of, because I feel like we've all been in that state, and like a lot of us are still in that state in our life where we don't seek out the opportunities and that potential for growth.
sure.
And even like just applying it to myself, I feel like a lot of people who have that very like and I feel like we can all relate to this, that perfectionist mentality where we're like, you know what? It's better for me to not even try this, because I would rather not even put my full effort into it, where I feel like, oh, like it's fine, like I didn't even do it, rather than try it and then end up failing. Because that would end up like, no, like I can't, like even for me, sometimes starting something as little as an essay is so hard at times, because I'm like, this essay has to be perfect. And if I end up doing it, then I'm going to fail. But then it's like, the more I'm delaying it, the more I'm like, it's better to have something that's half great than nothing.
Yeah.
So if you can give us your insights in regards to like breaking that pattern in your mind and in developing new patterns of behavior, and how that shifted in your growth and taking advantage of the opportunities
For sure.
out there.
So I don't think that you can ever perfect, like I am gonna like fully overcome this fear, because we are all humans, and that is okay sometimes, right? Like so sometimes you might be 100, sometimes you might be 75 or whatever. But if when you're at 25 and you still give your 100%, you still give, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, like
Yeah, you're putting your full effort.
exactly.
Yeah, it's not
exactly.
zero.
It's
And
not
by
zero.
25, you meant like 25%, right?
Yeah. and every small step counts, right?
I think one thing that, from based off what you said, the same thing, I thought something very similar when Jannat was speaking, that, there is no, I feel like there's no maximum failure, if that makes sense. Or
No.
there's no end goal to failure. Like, failure in itself, I feel like, is a social construct. Did I really fail something if I put my best effort? Like
For
you
sure,
said,
yeah.
if my 25%, my 25% was 100%.
That's still 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
For
then
sure.
did I really fail, or did I get further than where I started, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So
No,
I
I
think
love
that
the way you framed
concept
that.
of fear of failure is, realizing that it's not
You can
failing
yeah.
if you don't look at it as failing.
You can, yeah, for sure. But also, like, it's also very, very important to, like, tackle the root, right? Because, for example, a lot of people, which is also me, is you first start with, okay, like, I'm so scared of failing that I'm not gonna start something.
Yeah.
Whether that be essay or, like, community work or anything, right?
Yeah.
And then once you start it, now your fear shifts. Now it's okay. Now I am gonna burden myself out because I'm scared to fail. So I think there's that 2 point where some people's fear might be, like, I'm so scared to fail, so I'm not gonna start it.
Yeah.
Where the other people's fear is, I'm so scared to fail that I'm gonna overwork myself, burn myself out. Like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, right? And then also, cause also the roots, right, can be, I don't know, maybe you want to make your parents proud, or it could be maybe you have higher goals for yourself, or there's a person that's depending on you, or there's bills due. So I think that fear comes in a different type of forms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the
So,
pressures could be
for
different,
sure.
and the things that
Yeah.
affect this fear of failure, they could be different, or the roots.
Exactly. And then if, like, you don't, like, attack it right at the root, it might start spilling to your other relationships, right? For example, maybe once you're done school and work, which happened to me a lot, is when I'm with my family and I'm just chilling, it feels like I'm wasting time. It's like, okay,
Oh my God.
I feel like I should be doing something right now. Why am I here? And I'm just, watching TV. But that is still rooted in that fear of failing. You're like, okay, me just being here and just being a human, I am wasting my time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so in that case, do you
100%.
think that there's a necessity for us to all as humans really see, like, the idea of being and the concept of being, like right now we're
Just
Yeah.
being in the moment and being in
Being
the
in the
present
moment, for
is
sure.
so
very
difficult, because I
important.
feel like it also, like, we reflect, not to get, too in depth or too deep about this, but it, like, truly reflects the society that we live in, that we're always like, we got to work, we got to be productive, we got to be always moving, we got to
Like
be
hustle
working, school, the
mentality.
hustle mentality, the boss mentality.
The rat race.
Yeah, the rat
That
race,
is all it is.
exactly. Where, yes, it does fuel progression. It does fuel growth and development. But it's only growth on one side. What about your what growth of your mental health? What
For
about the
sure.
growth of your relationships? And I feel like when you're stuck in that fear of failing, of like, oh, I can't fail school, I can't fail work, like, and all these other commitments that, as you said, like,
Yeah.
and I've had those
sure.
moments where I'm sitting with my family,
Yeah.
they're watching a movie, we're all like, good time. I'm like, but I have to have my laptop open on the side to, like, be doing something, and I'm not even enjoying, like,
sure.
I don't even have, like, the good of both worlds, because I'm stuck in this middle.
That's also what I was gonna say, Jannat, which is, if why you're trying to achieve something is rooted in that fear of failing, you will never be satisfied.
Yeah.
Meaning, right? You might work so hard and you buy your car because your root was, okay, like, I'm so scared to fail that whatever. Now you have this car. You're like, okay, now so and so has this car. So now I want to buy this car, and then like, you will never be satisfied, and
Yep.
because then, and fulfillment comes, like, within, right? Like, if why you're trying to achieve something is because of that fear of failing, you could buy a house, but you can't buy a peace. You can buy bed, but you can't buy sleep, right? So
Ooh, that rhymed. All of that rhymed.
Bars.
Bars,
Bars. That was poetry right there. No, that was
I've been there,
beautiful.
and it is very tough, right? And because it's like, if there's a main issue, and if, like, you're just trying to put the bandages on it, it's
Yeah.
not really gonna
Heal.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you need to like
you need
really
like a passionate drive, I feel like, or a drive to do the initiatives and the things you want to
For
try
sure.
and take on opportunity, and that drive has to be rooted in something much deeper and greater than, you know, like trying to do it for someone just to please them, or doing it for, I don't know, what's
Fame,
like,
status,
yeah,
money,
like
do it
all these
for
things.
a purpose, for sure.
Yeah.
exactly. I think it has, like you said, it has to be rooted in the self, right?
For sure,
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of us that, you know, specifically, you know, for, you know, when we're in university, we're doing our exams, we're doing our midterms and assignments and all these sort of things. If we get that one bad grade, we're like, we are that bad grade. We are that
Which
disappointment.
comes back to labeling ourselves as like the failure, and
Exactly.
that's the mindset we
Yeah.
don't want, right?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of, and like Neb, if you can comment on like how a lot of us, with us like labeling ourselves as that, like, oh, we are that bad grade, we really like, not just, we get stuck in that thought, but we end up forgetting that this too shall pass. You know,
Exactly,
it's,
yeah, for sure.
it's ever changing. Like, you know, this, you are not that bad grade.
Right.
You know, you're gonna be in your third or fourth year, or you're going to be graduating in a year, and then you're going to look back and you're going to
You're
think like,
why
man,
did I
like,
get mad?
yeah, like I stressed on a little paper.
Yeah, for sure.
Not undermining the papers. Not undermining the papers.
I actually had this exact same experience maybe 2 days ago,
Wow.
which I had a quiz, right? And it was 3 questions, and I answered them the first 2 right. Then for the third question, you know when like you know what the answer is,
The gut feeling.
the
Yeah.
gut feeling, but then you're like, maybe it is B and not C.
Yeah.
And
you
it
know?
turns out to be C.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then you
So
hate
that
yourself.
happened to me, right? And we got our quiz back, and I looked at it, and I'm like,
Are you
but
kidding me?
yeah. But then like, I'm just like, okay, so now like, what can I do about it? Can I go back in time? No.
No.
Is there something that I could do? No. What you could do is like use it as an educational thing. You're like, okay, so maybe for the next time, trust your gut feeling, trust this. But there's nothing that I could do, right?
Yeah.
So stressing over it or is not gonna do. You know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say?
It's not
So-
going to make the situation better.
Exactly.
Like, you
And
can't
then-
control it.
and
Just
then
let go.
time,
Yeah.
Time is the most valuable thing that we have been given, right?
Yeah.
Everything, whether that be school, family, everything falls within time, right? Without time, you don't have, you know? So when time is the most valuable thing that we have been given, and you zoom out, you're like, okay, is this really worth my
Stressing
stress?
about,
Yeah.
And you really have to choose and fight your battles, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you choose to fight every single battle, you are destined to be burnt out.
No,
So,
definitely.
And I think
Choosing
that
your
fear-
battles wisely.
Bridging off of that point, right, when you say in terms of, you know, choosing your battles, I think it's also important to be mindful of, you know, what situations will actually impact us in the long run, right? If I'm afraid of failing something and it's so temporary where it's not going to affect me in the long run,
Yeah.
For
then
sure.
what is the stress about, you know? And if it is going to affect me in the long run, it's time to reevaluate how I can do better next time. And, you know, like for me as well, like I think in my own experiences with school especially, you know, managing a large workload and then also being active in other ways in life, it creates that like subconscious fear of failure as well. Sometimes that's like manifested where like you have, I want to say it's self-doubt. Like it's like a
Yeah.
little bit of self-doubt where like, I don't know if I could do it because there's
Yeah.
just so much going on. And then you think about like that one test and you're like, how am I going to do that? Or like the one assignment, a paper that you have to do. You're like, how am I going to make the deadline? And then it might manifest into like procrastination or like
Oh, God.
anxiety, right? All those things. And
For sure.
it's not a fun journey.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to share my experience, but I think
No,
like
an
Thank you for that,
experience we've
for
all
sure.
been
Yeah.
through. Definitely. You're not alone.
yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And also the dominoes effect, right? For example, if like you put, you know, the dominoes
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
you line them up.
Right.
There are some, if like you take out and you drop them all, the final one would still be standing.
Yeah.
So like you really have to like pick and choose, right? So
Right.
just as you were saying, we overstress of the smallest things sometimes that it's not really, worth
And
stressing
like
over.
from the beginning, when I had mentioned it takes up our mental capacity, because then, or your mental strength. So if you would feel burnt out more easily, right? If you were to not pick and choose your
For
battles.
sure, 100%. Yeah.
So before we wrap up this amazing conversation, I wanted to ask Neb if you can give any feedback or tips to our viewers and listeners out there in the vast internet.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. When we talk about the fear of failing, and when I when I look back at my own story, we have been through a lot, and if you guys can only take 3 things from my story, one is to really acknowledge that your pain is your power, right? Like you go through a lot of things for a reason, so to use it for your own advantage, right? 2 is to acknowledge the power of kindness.
Yes.
Right? To acknowledge that your personal success and your community success is deeply intertwined, and when you help others, the biggest person that you're actually helping is yourself, right? Like we don't have to pick from doing good and from excelling, right? In fact, that we can excel even much faster when we are doing good.
To community?
Exactly.
Wow.
And then 3 is to really acknowledge when we talk about fear of failing, is to really acknowledge that leadership is an act of service. Right?
Yes.
Yes, the authority can get things done, but service really has the power to change lives, right? So don't lose hope over like a small setback, and forget what you have overcome and how far you have overcome, right? And we're all rooting for you.
Yes.
And go and be the change that you want to see in this world. So we're rooting for you. Don't let your fear stop you, and you got this.
Yes.
That
was beautiful. Thank you so much, Neb. It has been.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, of course. Like it has been a pleasure for both Sakina and I to work with you, to have you on this episode.
And these 2 are really humble, but they are really amazing community leaders, really good friends,
very kind.
really kind and passionate
That means
leaders.
a lot coming from you.
And there's no other people that I would want to have as my co-workers. And you guys are really supportive.
Thank you, Neb.
Feel the
don't
same.
let the humbleness fool you.
Well, the feelings are mutual.
You know what's so funny, guys? We selectively handpicked Neb. We're like, we got
And all
to-
our guests.
Yeah,
All our
and
guests.
I meant in terms of working. Like,
For working. Yeah.
We were we were looking for a 3rd person to join our team, and Jannat and I both suggested Nebiyou Timotewos.
Yes.
And actually, and there's actually like a funny story that I want to tell if we still have time. There was like a job that I had, right? And then like God been telling me like quit this job. Like time is here. You know, like it was like an amazing work experience, like an amazing job. But when it is time, it's time. And that job really changed my like life for like the positive. But I also felt like, okay, like I could stay here, or I could leave and I could give another youth a chance to experience this amazing experience. But then it was okay, if I leave this job, I don't have any other job. But I'm like, you know what, let me follow and trust God. So I left the job, and then I referred a youth, and then maybe 2 hours after, Sakina calls.
Wow.
And then she's like, hey, and I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, so actually, there is this opening, and I'm like, wow.
The way, like God,
It worked out so
God is
perfectly.
good.
God is great.
good.
God is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
thank you guys so much for
It's a
sharing.
beautiful way to wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for listening
Thank you
and
guys so
tuning
much.
in. Make sure to follow us on Spotify, subscribe to our YouTube, give us a like, leave your comments, people. Please, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. And we will see you next time. Take care. Bye.